Well, let's get on to the weekend. Let's get on to the Middlesbrough game. I mean, if ever there was going to be a fixture which would give you hope, then surely it's got to be a trip to the team at the bottom of the table. But true to form, we gifted them their first league win of the season. Steve, you were there. You made the trip. How bad was it? Because, I mean, to me, the first 15 minutes seemed all right. And then almost it went wrong after we'd scored.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing that kind of Russell Martin did actually kind of identify correctly in his post-match interview, was the baffling response to us going in front was to basically decide, oh well, this is us done. We'll just kind of take it easy for the rest of the game, and it was bizarre. I mean, I don't think we played particularly well. Even in that sort of early period when we were probably just about on top. But because Borough kept finding outlets down both flanks. I mean, Walker-Peters at least had a bit of support from Ryan Fraser in the first half. Holgate had absolutely no support whatsoever from Adam Armstrong playing on the opposite flank. And as a result, their left back had the freedom of the Riverside for most of that first half. And I suspect that's partly a reason for Holgate's insanely heavy touch, the sort of Colton Palmer control from the mid-90s, where he's overhit it. And whereas if he'd had support around him, if he knew that he had his right winger just sort of 20 yards away from him, he could easily have played a first-time little pass around the corner to him, and we'd have been on the counter-attack again, and there'd have been absolutely no danger whatsoever. But again, we've got our slightly ropey defence being left completely exposed. I mean, Holgate obviously didn't cover himself in any glory, but with that goal especially. But other than that, he was kind of okay, I thought.
Is there a good player in there, do you think? It's going to work out all right?
I mean, there's probably a player in there. Whether he's good or not, I don't know. But the problem is that, I mean, he had 60 minutes, which I mean, maybe the solution is just not to let him travel to the northeast ever again. Because obviously he had 60 minutes with an absolute shocker at Sunderland. 45 minutes here, where essentially he's been sacrificed at half time, and Martin has tacitly admitted that he's basically hauled him off and brought Manning back in. I mean, I'm not quite sure why Manning was left out in the first place. I saw rumours of him being not quite fully fit or something, but
tired, wasn't it? I thought maybe it was a good opportunity to bring Holgate back in a game where we ought to get a decent result away from home. He has a really good performance, and then his head's back in the game. That was my first thought, and then of course he made the mistake. And I mean, Alfie, a second goal would have killed the game off probably for us, but it was very, very strange after we scored.
Yeah. In terms of the team selection, I mean, I actually thought the midfield was okay. To be fair, I agree with Russell at the end that the midfield three was fine. Will Smallbone, should have had an assist. I know. I mean, when you look at it, there was not much creativity, was there, in that midfield three, and I do agree with that. But at the end of the day, the first goal came from Flynn Downs winning the ball back high up the pitch, which is a form of creativity in itself. And then the goal comes from that. And Will Smallbone should have had an assist if Chadham's could hit a barn door twice in a week. So the chances were there to win the game. The Holgate one is interesting. Like you say, Ryan Manning, I asked about him at the end of the game, and he said that he was tired. And like you said, he's played a lot of games. He didn't have a full pre-season. You've got to rotate in a 46-game season at some point, and you've got to be able to trust the players that you bring in. And Mason Holgate had a couple of weeks off since that Sunderland one. And I felt that maybe it was the right time to bring him back in. On reflection, I wonder what James Bree was thinking, because James Bree in his own position now can't even get a game second choice. And it makes you wonder why he's still here, if they think that low level. I know he played against Gillingham and came out and spoke to us after that. And he was pretty downcast then, but you just think, is he going to play a game ever again? For this club? Possibly not. And the reaction to scoring was just, I drove home obviously for sort of 4.5 hours, and I think about 12 times me and George having a conversation, and the conversation would stop, and I would go, oh, fucking hell, I can't believe they lost. About generally 10, 11, 12 times. I couldn't believe it. When they went 1-0 up, I thought that was an absolute banker. Good touch and finish by Adam Armstrong, by the way, and a good setup from Che Adams as well, to give him credit. But I can't believe it.
About the only thing Shea did all afternoon, to be honest.
Yeah. And I don't know what the difference is between Che in August and Che in September. Well, apart from obviously you could say playing for a move. I don't know how much that actually impacts him, but I think maybe it does because it's 2 years in a row now. And a massive shame. And then there's the second half. They were torn apart in the second half, the sort of final 30 minutes. And it could well have been 4-5 again. It could have been. They hit the post. I think Bazunu made a really good save on the eventual goal scorer. Howard Bellis had a really bad day, and we all know that he's going to be a good player. He has to be. He's done it already for Burnley. But there's just such a lack of leadership at the back that I don't think anyone believes in himself. Like you put a comment up a minute ago saying Holgate didn't get a call that someone was behind him. And you were on that side, Steve, so you'd have heard better than I did, but it looked that way for sure. And Howard Bellis in the middle of the park twice in about 2 minutes in the second half. Balls bouncing up and he just misjudges both of them or gives one away and they're in behind counter straight away. And you just think these are players who should be good enough. And I can't put my finger on why they're not. And obviously there's a few reasons.
Yeah, Howard Bellis got completely bullied by their big lad up front. And you would have thought that, maybe there should have been a little bit more communication between him and Jan Bednarek to say, well, okay, I'm not winning anything against him. Why don't you have a go? I don't know obviously I'm no sort of Premier League or Championship level tactician, but surely there's scope for players to sort this stuff out between themselves.
But that's the thing. There's a clear deficit, isn't there? There's no one taking charge of the situation. Nobody taking control on the pitch. I think we saw that again. What was the game before Leicester? There was a game where it might have been Leicester, actually. I'm thinking it might have been Leicester, where they're taking short free kicks and it's going 4 or 5 yards wide of people, and people just standing there watching, waiting for the next person to get it.
Yeah,
nobody's taking charge.
Of course, we almost conceded from our own corner again. Which was a short corner taken in a rush that really didn't need to be taken. Just a complete head loss in that second half once we went 1-0 down.
It's the manager's job to pull that together, and I do honestly believe that he's got a tougher task than I thought he did at the start of the season. I thought this was a squad that was, promotion ready, but the best you can hope for now is playoffs. I think there's absolutely. I know we're only 8 games in, and you can't make sweeping statements, but the automatics look an absolute mile off, and that was the aim at the start of the season. So something's got to change quickly, and I don't necessarily mean the manager. I just mean something's got to be fixed, and the mentality's got to come in. And is there any free agents that are available that have actually played a game of football well in the last couple of years?
They can lift and a voice at the back, maybe. Glen, I know even Dana from the Borough podcast last week predicted that we'd win 2-1. So they weren't overly confident about getting anything out of it, but it was the equaliser before the break, and that was just a sucker punch again.
And I found Russell Martin's comments interesting that, as the lads have both said, we went to pieces after we scored. Whereas against Ipswich, he was saying we went to pieces after we conceded. So doesn't leave a lot, does it? And we know that we can't
do 0-0.
We can't manage the 3 or 4 minutes before half time, because I think is it 4 times this season we've let in a goal in that period. So I think it's a really bad defeat. Putting aside the arguments over selection and styles of football and stuff like that, it's a really bad defeat to lose to a team who, after 7 games, have only scored 5 goals or something. And we gave them 4 or 5 really, really good chances to score. I know it's slightly misleading because we were, chucking everybody forward for the last 10 minutes when they had a couple of good chances. But it's a really bad defeat, and I just came away from the game sort of wondering. Is anyone capable of playing this style of football with Championship level players, or do you have to have Manchester City level players to play this kind of way and do it successfully? Russell Martin
last season.
You what? Sorry,
Burnley did it last season. More or less.
Yeah, to the back end of the Swansea. They won the last 9 games of the season. Whatever they say
they did, but where did they finish? They finished 13th, and that's kind of where that's kind of where I see us finishing at the moment. Maybe it's enough to win enough games to make you be 13th or whatever. Russell Martin seems to be pinning everything on it suddenly clicking, and we'll go on a run similar to what Swansea had at the tail end of last season. But at the moment, we look miles off. We look absolutely miles off. We don't look good enough up front, and the defenders. I wonder if the defenders are buying into this, because if the midfield's not completely on it, then the defenders are only going to end up looking bad. I mean, if you go back to,
can't be any fun for them, can it?
No, you go back to that Ipswich game. I forgot to mention this earlier, but
Harwood
Bellis with the ball a couple of times, and he ends up booting the ball out of play, and he's berating the midfielders in front of him because Aribo and Smallbone didn't want the ball. Adam Armstrong was miles away up front,
and he was absolutely right.
Should have been absolutely. He was right, and Shea Charles gives the goal away because he's looking up for someone to pass to. There ain't anybody there. He probably thought, "Oh, what shall I do?" Fatal hesitation for a second, lost the ball, goal. So if you, I do feel sorry for the defenders, and I felt a bit sorry for Holgate because he got thrown into that game at Middlesbrough. We all know how key the fullbacks are to this system. He's not a fullback. I mean, as far as I remember, he played most of his career at Everton at centre back, and he played in central midfield occasionally when they wanted to put. Everton always go for this dogs of war approach at some point, don't they? Where they just put a centre half in midfield. He just goes around kicking everything. So Holgate, I don't think is really a right back. So he's been thrown in out of position and been expected to play that, as Steve said, with no cover from the winger, which you would normally get. So yeah, it's a worrying defeat. And also, every team who played in the Championship last year knows how we're going to play. There's no element of surprise for a team like Middlesbrough. They probably set up. Michael Carrick probably played against Swansea last year. I know what they're going to do, and But what got me about the game as I watched it, though, we created the chance for Adams and we scored the goal. High press, pass the ball forwards, score, and we stopped doing that. We completely stopped doing that, and then when we got the ball, it was slow build up, pass sideways and backwards as a first. As a first resort rather than a last resort. No one was looking to pass forward anymore. Ryan Fraser, another one I felt sorry for, because every time I saw him in the Ipswich game, he makes run after run after run, don't get the ball. Ryan Manning is deadly at turning back inside and just, they're not playing the obvious passes forward. And to be honest, this has been a problem since the first game of the season. Do you remember the Sheffield Wednesday game where Adam Armstrong played as the number 9? Barely touched the ball. Plymouth, Shea Adams played up front. 20 minutes, didn't touch the ball. We seem to bulk at actually passing the ball forwards along the ground sometimes, and that's when it all seems to grind to a halt and become a mess. So, what I took from the Middlesbrough game was we've got to do the basics and look to pass the ball forwards. Otherwise, we are really, really going to struggle, and teams are just going to sit in and wait for the sort of press and triggers that they've got when the ball's getting passed across our back four, and then we're going to be in trouble. So it was and I'm just hoping that Russell Martin can see, not that exactly, because I'm not saying I'm any sort of genius with this sort of stuff, but I'm hoping that he can sort of like try and fix some of these what look to me to be quite obvious problems that we've got with the basic structure of the team, and then hopefully things will be okay.
I think it was it Wes Burns, Alfie, the interview that he did with one of the other papers, where he said that we were really easy to read the passes, and it was so simple for them to work out what was going on, and then we ended up just kicking balls away or out of field because they were getting there and they were knowing what angles and they were cutting those out.
It's an easy thing to say when you've won the game, isn't it? But it's a very worrying thing to hear when it's about your team. If players and managers are coming into the game, and I actually asked Kieran McKenna at full time as well. I said to him, did you prepare for Southampton in any particular way? But unfortunately, the managers, they're all too pally nowadays that he wasn't actually able to tell me. He said, no, we know Russell's a great manager. We know that Southampton will be a tough game. He didn't actually get into what they did specifically to prepare, which was a shame. So I wanted him to explain if it's that obvious, then tell us, because something needs to happen. But I suppose that's why I didn't.